It was a warm summer evening in Baltimore County on July 28, 2021, the kind of night when routine police work is often defined by traffic stops, minor disputes, and paperwork. Yet, for one officer, what began as a simple traffic stop would unravel into one of the most haunting discoveries in Maryland's recent memory. The driver, a woman named Nicole Johnson, had been pulled over for speeding and driving without proper registration. By all appearances, it was an ordinary encounter, the kind that typically ends with a ticket or a towed car. But as the officer approached the vehicle, an odor, strong, foul, and unmistakable, rose from the car. When the boot was opened, the horror revealed itself. Inside were the decomposing remains of 2 children. Subscribe for more true crime stories and cold case breakthroughs. Like this video if you support justice for victims. Turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Their names were Joshlyn Johnson, aged 7, and her little brother Larry O'Neal Jr., 5 years old. They had been missing, though no one seemed to notice, for over a year. Their caretaker, their Aunt Nicole Johnson, had not only failed them, she had hidden them, carrying their remains in her vehicle as if their lives and deaths were nothing more than an inconvenience. This was not simply a story of crime, it was a story of betrayal, silence, and systemic collapse. It is the kind of case that raises questions long after the verdict is read. How could 2 children vanish so quietly? Why did no one sound the alarm? And how did the person entrusted with their protection become the one who sealed their fate? This is the full story of Nicole Johnson, her niece Joshlyn, her nephew Larry, and the investigation that revealed a tragedy hidden in plain sight. Nicole Johnson was not born into extraordinary circumstances. Her early life mirrored that of many young women navigating unstable households, shifting caretakers, and cycles of poverty. By the time she reached adulthood, she was already carrying the weight of fractured relationships and responsibilities she seemed ill-prepared to shoulder. Her sister, struggling with personal and financial instability, turned to Johnson for help with raising her 2 children. It was a decision born of desperation, perhaps trust, but ultimately one that would prove fatal. In 2019, legal custody of Joshlyn and Larry was transferred to Johnson. On paper, it may have seemed like a responsible move. But behind the scenes, it was the beginning of a downward spiral. Johnson had neither the resources nor the temperament to care for 2 young children. Those close to her described her as volatile, prone to anger, and often dismissive of responsibility. Yet, no mechanism existed to ensure she was fit for guardianship. For Joshlyn and Larry, childhood was already precarious. Their mother, overwhelmed, faded from their daily lives. Their aunt, the new custodian of their well-being, was unstable. And society, the schools, the agencies, the systems meant to protect, failed to notice the warning signs. To understand the tragedy, one must first understand the children themselves. Joshlyn, at 7 years old, was full of promise. Teachers once remembered her as bright and eager, though her school attendance had grown sporadic. She enjoyed drawing and often doodled animals and flowers on her notebooks. She was inquisitive, with an energy that could not easily be contained. Larry, just 5, was quieter but no less remarkable. Shy with strangers, he found joy in the simplest things. He was known for carrying toy cars, revving them along tabletops and making the buzzing sounds of engines. Family members described him as affectionate, a boy who still sought the comfort of holding hands. They were ordinary children in extraordinary peril, though they could not have known it. They should have been safe, growing, learning, playing. Instead, their lives were quietly extinguished, and for months, no one came looking. Once Nicole Johnson assumed custody, her resentment toward the children deepened. She had no steady income, no stable housing, and no plan for their upbringing. To neighbors, she often appeared frazzled, short-tempered, and disconnected from the children. Neglect became routine. The children missed meals. They appeared underweight and unkempt. Their school absences mounted, drawing little effective intervention. The school system, already stretched, flagged concerns but lacked the authority to conduct welfare checks without escalation. Child protection services were never alerted with the urgency required. Slowly, Joshlyn and Larry slipped from visibility. Their voices grew quieter in the world, their presence fading until their absence became unremarkable. In 2020, Johnson's anger turned deadly. According to her later admissions, she struck Joshlyn during an argument. The blow caused the young girl to fall and hit her head. Instead of seeking help, Johnson let her die. Panic might have been expected, but Johnson's actions were chillingly calculated. She placed Joshlyn's body in a suitcase, which she hid in her car. Months later, Larry too died. Johnson never provided a clear account. At times, she claimed illness. At other moments, she gave conflicting explanations. But what was consistent was her indifference. His body was placed in a tote bin, sealed away like discarded belongings. For months, Johnson drove around Baltimore with both children concealed in her car. The odor grew unbearable, yet she masked it with air fresheners. She lived her life, visited stores, and met people, all while the silent evidence of her crimes traveled with her. The secrecy was staggering, but what is more staggering is that no one noticed, or chose not to act. On the night of July 28, 2021, police stopped Johnson for speeding and driving without a valid license or registration. The stop seemed routine until officers decided to tow her car. As they inspected the vehicle, they encountered the stench of decomposition. Opening the boot, they found the suitcase and tote. Inside lay the skeletal remains of Joshlyn and Larry. The discovery shook even seasoned officers. One officer later admitted it was among the most harrowing scenes they had ever encountered. Johnson's response was not of shock or grief, but cold indifference. At one point, she allegedly told police, "It doesn't matter, they're already dead." The Baltimore County Medical Examiner confirmed the identities. Joshlyn Johnson and Larry O'Neal Jr. autopsies revealed they had been dead for many months. Detectives dug into Johnson's timeline, piecing together evidence of long-term neglect. They discovered she had been moving between motels and temporary lodgings, always with the remains in her possession. Her explanations shifted. Sometimes she claimed accident. Sometimes she blamed stress. But what never emerged was remorse. The children's mother, upon learning the news, collapsed in grief. Family members were shattered, questioning how such horror could have remained hidden for so long. Nicole Johnson was charged with 2 counts of first-degree child abuse resulting in death, among other charges. In 2023, she pleaded guilty. The courtroom heard the gruesome details, how the children had been neglected, how their remains were concealed, how their lives had been reduced to silence. The judge, in delivering a sentence of 40 years in prison, called it a crime, not only against 2 children but against the trust of society itself. For some, the sentence felt like justice. For others, no measure of punishment could account for the lives lost. The case captured national attention, not only for its horror but for what it revealed about systemic breakdown. How could children vanish from school rolls without urgent intervention? Why did no welfare checks follow the custody transfer? Why did neighbors, who admitted seeing signs of neglect, remain silent? The answers were grim. America's child welfare system, stretched thin and often reactive rather than proactive, failed Joshlyn and Larry. Their story became a rallying cry for reform, though, as history often shows, outrage fades faster than change. At the center of this story are 2 children who never had the chance to grow. Their absence is felt not only by family but by the community that should have safeguarded them. True crime stories often risk sensationalizing perpetrators. But here, the weight must remain on the victims. Joshlyn and Larry were more than evidence, they were children who laughed, played, and dreamed. Their story is not merely one of violence, but of silence, the silence of systems, of communities, of individuals who failed to intervene. The Nicole Johnson case is a chilling reminder that evil is not always loud or visible. Sometimes, it hides in neglect. Sometimes, it hides in apathy. And sometimes, it hides in plain sight, waiting for someone, anyone, to care enough to act. Joshlyn and Larry should be remembered not as headlines, but as children who deserved more. Their story forces us to ask, when we see the warning signs, will we remain silent? Or will we speak, before tragedy takes another voice too soon?